Welcome to Sideline Sisters, where we empower women in sports one conversation at a time. We celebrate the women who make the WNBA legendary while providing our unfiltered thoughts and analysis on the game. Winsider is expanding its network to include more diverse voices that are knowledgeable and passionate about the WNBA. Hear from the women who are redefining WNBA coverage and hoops talk.
I'm Jasmine Harper.
And I'm Pedraza, and you're courtside with the Sideline Sisters. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sideline Sisters. We are your hosts, Candace, Pedraza and Jasmine Harper. Jasmine, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, Ace. Leading up to opening day, which is today, as everybody's listening to this episode. It's been a hectic week at Winsider, especially for the social media and graphics and design team. Shout out to everybody, writing team, editors, quite literally everybody at Winsider. We've been pushing out a lot of content, articles, quite literally everything, videos. So just thank y'all for, rolling with the punches through the chaos, because we can thrive in it. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, but not everybody else can. So shout out to y'all.
Absolutely. If you have not checked out winsider.com, any of our social media, TikTok, Blue Sky, Twitter, anywhere that you get your social media, please check it out because the social team has been absolutely killing it before the season starts. It's going to get even more hectic, but wonderful because the season starts today. So there's going to be so much more to talk about. And the speculation is pretty much over. Like, it's time to just see teams actually start competing and start hooping. And it's going to be really, really exciting. So I feel like there are a lot of teams that genuinely are good and can make the postseason. And that end of season is going to be very, very interesting. There are a bunch of interesting storylines, obviously, throughout the league. We can only cover so many, even though I'm sure both of us could just keep talking forever about all the very questionable, in good and bad ways, some of these teams have us thinking about. But we're picking three storylines that we're really following ahead of the regular season starting today. Jasmine, what are your three teams that you feel like you're going to be following the most? Or not three teams, but more so just three overarching storylines that you're looking forward to following before the season actually starts?
Yeah, so I'll be cliche and I'll just go ahead and start with Dallas because I feel like that's just the easiest one to go ahead and get out the way. I think there's a lot of new energy in Dallas, and this is coming from somebody who's been covering the team as a beat reporter for the entire time I've been at Winsider, which I joined in 2021, heading into year 5. So yeah, all of this new energy in Dallas with Paige being the number 1 pick, Kurt Miller being the new GM, Chris Clanes coming in as well as the new head coach, and Noah Henry and the other assistant coaches that he has on his bench to kind of support him along the way. I think that Dallas has a lot to be happy about right now. They've definitely made some pretty hard but good decisions that are putting the trajectory of this season in the place that it needs to be. So with all this fresh energy, I think I'm still trying to answer the question of, is this going to be any different than what we've seen in previous seasons? Because, ownership is still the same. And we already know how that kind of goes with the WNBA. And even though Greg Bibb has kind of released the reins a little bit and he's no longer being the GM, he still holds the say-so at the end of the day, being the team president and CEO. So I'm still trying to assess how do we best optimize Paige and her basketball IQ. Final rosters came out Thursday, and we can see the personnel that she has around her, as well as, some of the other people that they got, like Melissa Smith and Dejanay Carrington. How does it all come together to kind of put Paige in the best position to win? And how does Dallas kind of consider her health and injury history coming off of a deep March Madness run where she just won her first and last natty, but congrats to her still. And ultimately, team chemistry for Dallas, how is it all going to come together? We've already seen a team kind of like this, but a little, well, I guess you could say they were still young back then when Marina, Alicia Gray, Kayla Thornton, Ty Harris in her first stint with the Dallas Wings, when they were all kind of working together. They had some high moments and low moments, but for the most part, they were never ever really to put it together. So how does it all really come together for Dallas in 2025 is my question right now. But I do think it's an interesting storyline to follow. What do you think about Dallas?
I agree. I feel like Dallas is going to be very interesting to watch, but I have a lot of reservations, I feel like, about I think their ceiling at the moment, especially
Okay.
because I do think that they could add a bit more to their roster, especially in the way of bigs and specifically their center depth, especially after losing Natasha Howard this offseason. They also lost
Hmm.
Kalani Brown. So I'm very curious to see how other bigs step up, especially Melissa Smith. I feel like she's sort of been hunting for a role over the past
Hmm.
couple of seasons, and she's been a little bit inconsistent in that way. But I do think that someone like Paige can definitely unlock her potential. That's a lot of not burden, but a lot of responsibility to place on a rookie's shoulders. But I think that
Hmm.
she's definitely up for the challenge, especially as someone who is just so hell bent on passing and making
Hmm.
sure she's optimizing her passes. We already
Yeah.
saw that between her and Enrique in the preseason. She had a very wild pass that I think went a little bit viral
Hmm.
because it was ridiculous and it kind of showed you what Dallas can look like with those two in a backcourt together. So I am very curious about them. I do think that they have a great coaching staff. Like you mentioned, they're not messing around in terms of just, throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. I do think that the
Hmm.
roster has some intentionality behind it, but I'm very curious to see how far they could go this season and prior to the new CBA and seeing if anything changes maybe next year or the year after
Hmm.
in terms of surrounding Paige with talent in the way that maybe the Indiana Fever kind of did this
Yeah.
offseason.
I definitely agree with that. One thing I'll say about Paige when you mentioned Alyssa Smith, I think it just kind of speaks to Paige's overall maturity as a basketball player that we can give her some type of level of responsibility to elevate her teammates' game, and she kind of takes that on herself a little bit as well. So I don't think we're giving Paige anything more than she can handle, but I'm definitely interested to see if she and Alyssa Smith can get some kind of groove, especially if they're starting together. You want to have that chemistry established between the two of them. In terms of Indiana, another storyline that I think is pretty interesting for the season is how will all the big names and superstars fare after switching teams during the offseason? So for Indiana, they have a slew of new people. Dewana Bonner signed there, Natasha Howard did, as well as Sydney Colson from Vegas. So how do they, kind of fit into the new realm of women's basketball where, you are playing with the Caitlin Clark, you are playing with the Paige Beckers, et cetera, Dominique Malonga. So how do you find your own niche and carve it out while also trying to play a little bit more team basketball? The same thing goes for Jewel Lloyd, Natasha Cloud, Satu, and Kelsey Plum as well. Like, how do they fit into these new teams and what identity or what kind of player are they trying to be this season? I think that's pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like the one that sticks out to me a lot is definitely Kelsey Plum, just because I do think that we saw this offseason, it seemed like she was pretty okay with the trade from the Aces to LA because she wanted a fresh start. And now she kind of has the reins for this team, and she did not really have that role before with Vegas. Obviously, Asia Wilson is going to be the face of that team. She is
Hmm.
the leader of that team. She is the, MVP. So obviously, she would be the one leading that squad. Kelsey Plum has an opportunity to sort of make an even greater name for herself. She already has a name for herself in the league, but an opportunity to really, really stamp herself as a major star and face in the league if she's able to lead this Sparks team
Hmm.
to at least the postseason after a pretty poor season in 2024, which
Yeah.
was, they dealt with a lot of injuries. So I will cut them some slack there. But this roster, the Sparks roster, which we can get into later since it's finalized, they have a lot of potential. And I think with Kelsey Plum at the helm, they're going to be pretty great.
Yeah, I do wish that Kelsey could have ended up somewhere a little bit more competitive, as well as matching the vibe, as well as the I want to say like the training facilities, like what you achieved in Vegas. How could you go to another team that already has that? But if she wants to, like, be the face of the Sparks organization as they're going through this transition, who am I to stop her? Do what makes your heart happy, I guess.
Yeah.
I do think the last storyline that I've been following, I'm not too happy about it, but I just want to see how it pans out. This positionless basketball that the Phoenix Mercury have been trying to push, it's not really my favorite thing. And I hate to bring up NBA stuff on here, but I have to. Even with the Celtics, their positionless basketball, shooting all of these threes, like I can't get behind it. So I think that Phoenix Mercury, and then I can't remember what other team it was. I have to go back and check my notes. But the Phoenix Mercury specifically, how does positionless basketball kind of fit for them? Because you don't want to get into a space where you're taking too many threes. And then with that, you're neglecting the mid range, which I feel like that's basic basketball. If you can't make a shot in the mid range, I don't really know what you can do. Like, shooting threes isn't everything, and I don't always need somebody to either shoot a three or drive to the basket. That's not really like a system, in my opinion. And then every big can't shoot. It's nice that Natasha Mack and Kalani Brown can hit a couple of shots, but who's to say that's going to happen like every single game? So I think that we have to start placing a little bit more priority on positions. Like, a true point guard can bring so much flow and consistency to a team. And the same thing can be said about a big. I love a big girl in the post. I love Brianna Jones. Like, her game being right under the basket or, within the 3 feet mark. I feel like a lot of people try to steer away from that. And even like, you can take somebody like Brittany Griner, who I feel like has incorporated a lot more shot making into her game than she used to, but she still uses her size and get in the paint to go up against opponents. So I don't know how this, positionless thing is going to pan out, but I'm still going to watch it.
I agree with everything you said about it. Cause I think that while it should be interesting, and obviously they have Alyssa Thomas who can, I guess, play that point forward role for them pretty consistently. And I think that's what they're resting on and betting on. They absolutely should have another point guard in the mix. And I think that that's going to be really key, especially to getting both Satu Sabali involved and Kalia Copper involved, Kalani Brown, like you mentioned, Natasha Mack. Like, Alyssa Thomas is the engine of any offense that she's a part of, but it can't just be on her shoulders. And I feel like that's just it's not sustainable. And like you said, especially if you don't really have the shooters to really back that up, that's going to be a concern. So I totally agree.
Even if Alyssa Thomas is your point forward, that's fine. We've seen that from a couple of people like throughout the W. But it's becoming a lot more common now. And Alyssa Thomas herself does operate in that sphere very well, but everybody else doesn't have to. Like, Ka can still play a three. I love when she slashes to the basket. I think that's one of her strengths as a player. Kalani Brown can still operate in the post, but she can come out, if she wants to take a couple of shots. And, the same can be said for Satu. When she played at a small forward position in 2023, she won Most Improved Player of the Year instead of at the 4, where she historically had sustained a lot of injuries and things like that. So I hope that the head coach knows what he's doing, Just going to see how that unfolds. But what about you? What are some storylines that you've been thinking about in terms of interests?
Yeah. So speaking of 3-point shooting, a storyline that I'm really curious to see play out is Atlanta, because the Dream were one of the worst shooting teams in the WNBA last year. And it wasn't because they have bad shooters. Obviously, Alicia Gray, Ryan Howard, these are players that shoot pretty well from 3-point range. They just weren't taking any compared to other teams in the league. Now they have Carl Schmesko, who ran a pretty heavy 3-point offense when he was a college coach. Coming over, he now has also the addition of not Pow Pow, but I'm thinking of somebody else. But Pow Pow is somebody that can take threes and shoot them pretty consistently, even though last year she did kind of slip up in that statistical category. So I'm very curious to see how long they could lead into that and really up their 3-point shooting variance. And if that ends up helping their offense in any way, obviously 3-point shooting, that really helps with your spacing on the floor. And they have two bigs who will greatly benefit from that spacing in Bree Jones and also Brittany Griner. So I'm very excited to see if that actually works out for them. Because if it does, that would place Atlanta in a pretty good spot, especially in the postseason run that I'm sure they'll be involved in if this actually does work out. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on just this reinvented Atlanta offense and if it's going to shake the table in any way for the Dream.
You know, this just seems like positionless basketball and lemon pepper flavored like mix or whatever. Like it's literally the same thing. Everybody's shooting threes. And just for the record, I tell this to everybody: NBA, WNBA, basketball, period. I don't need my team taking more than 8 threes a quarter. That's 32 in a game. We shouldn't be shooting like 50 threes a game and things like that. So, and I'm also, this kind of goes back to Dallas last year with LT. You have two of the tallest players in the WNBA on your team, and you're trying to pull them out to the perimeter or not have them together in the post. At some point, we have to let people play to their strengths. So I get that we want to be more versatile. We want to shoot. We want to be flashy. Get in the post. Get some rebounds. Okay. Box out. Throw a little couple elbows. You know, we love to see it. Play hard. Like, it doesn't just always have to be about, you know, shots at the three. I am interested to see Carl Smesco's system and how it works and builds around Ryan Howard as well. I think that at this point in Ryan's career, we do need to see like a second round playoffs run. This just goes back to a little bit of the maturity that I was talking about with Paige and her game. Like, just seeing how these players can evolve and make their teammates better. Ryan is getting to that stage where it's like, you know, it's time to take that next step to elevate your game. So if we are going to do this system, I do think she's the person to lead the charge for it, but let's make sure we're putting everybody in the best position to win.
Absolutely. And I think that it kind of makes the signing of both Bree Jones and Brittany Griner feel a little bit more intentional because, like you were saying, you want them to also be, you know, taking into importance how nice it would be to get some more post scoring. And I feel like those two will definitely help in that category. But I will scream if they are taking, if either or both of them are taking more threes than mid range or put like that would be pretty wild. I doubt it, but that would be very wild and frustrating.
I don't want BG at the perimeter for 50% of the game. I'm sorry. No.
Absolutely not. 1 or 2 a game, go for it. Other than that, you know where we need you.
You know where we want you.
So other than Atlanta, I feel like the Chicago Sky are another team that I'm going to be watching, but specifically, I'm very curious to see how much Courtney Vandersloot really impacts their ceiling as a team, because I feel like last year, I think outside of shooting, the one thing that they really needed was a veteran point guard who was consistently feeding both Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. Obviously, Camila was injured for most of the year, so mostly Angel. And they got some of that with Kennedy Carter, some of that with Diamond DeShields, but this year now they have Courtney Vandersloot back. And I think she still has a lot to provide, especially with her passing and her vision. And I think she's going to unlock so much for Angel and also Camilla and also Elizabeth Williams, who's going to be back. So I think Chicago's bigs are too talented to not have a point guard like Courtney Vandersloot in the building. And so I'm very excited to see how that opens things up for all three of them. But I also do want to see them very opposite to like what we've been talking about with please don't hit or take like hundreds of threes per game. I do want to see them take more threes as well, just because they did add really solid shooting this offseason. They got Rebecca Allen back. They also have Kia Nurse. those two can hit threes at a pretty decent clip. So I would like to see some of that as well. But I think it all falls on Courtney Vandersloot and her ability to really unlock that offense that I think has a lot of potential. And I feel like Chicago is just a little bit overlooked. Not like very overlooked this
Mm-hmm.
offseason, but just a little tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that they could make a postseason push as well this year because of her.
Yeah, I think that Courtney Vandersloot is getting what she asked for. She wanted a bigger role to play on a team, and to go far. She wanted to take them far, and I felt like she could have did it with New York. But at the same time, with the evolution of the WNBA and teams are trying to go back to back now, I understand if you feel like you're getting a reduced role, you may want to move on to somewhere else. So it's like no hard feelings, but um I think they are a little bit overlooked because Angel and Camilla are only in year 2, and they're barring Elizabeth Williams, they're your starting 4 and 5. And that's totally fine to have them at those positions. I don't necessarily agree with that, but they are going against like players like DeWanna Bonner, Natasha Howard, Asia Wilson, Gabby Williams, Dominique Malonga, Ezzy. Like the list can really go on. So I think that Courtney is really going to have to communicate with them and lead the floor really, really well, because I feel like they may not really get ate up in the post or whatever, but when you are going against an Asia Wilson, you need somebody who can keep you grounded and keep you, on course. So that way, you can find the success that you're looking for on the court together. So I think
Yeah.
that the addition of Beck Allen was also pretty good. Kia Nurse as well. I'm a little bit higher on Beck Allen just because I especially loved her with the Connecticut Sun. I felt like she just fed off of everybody's energy and was just knocking shots, lights out. So I'm really interested to see how all of them come together. But I do think that from last year's Sky Team to this year's Sky Team, that experience and veteran leadership has definitely like skyrocketed to the top for sure.
Totally. And yeah, I agree with Beck Allen, especially because I feel like when she was with the Sun, that's when I saw their offense really open up because she was able to space the floor so well. And then she left them, and then Connecticut really had like no shooters from the perimeter until they traded for Marina Mabry.
Yep.
Um, and then the same for Phoenix, where once she got injured and she was out for the season, their shooting really struggled. So her impact
Hmm.
is very underrated. So I
Yeah.
I agree. I think she's definitely going to do a lot for them and Chicago's
Hmm.
offense. Um, the third one is something you kind of already touched on, which is just seeing and comparing the Aces post trade of Kelsey Plum and the Sparks post that trade. So seeing how well the Sparks do with Kelsey Plum compared to the
Yeah.
Aces who acquired Jewel Lloyd. I'm very curious to see the Aces offense this year. I think Jewel Lloyd, obviously, she's one of the best shooters in the league. I'm curious to see how that looks alongside Chelsea Gray and Jackie Young as well.
Hmm.
It's one of those things though where I'm like, I kind of just have to see like and justify it in my head once I actually see
Hmm.
the offense on the floor together.
Hmm.
Because I think at the time of the trade, my initial thought was this is a very one for one trade. Like, just because I feel like Jewel Lloyd and Kelsey Plum play very similar roles in their offenses. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I do want to see Jewel Lloyd be able to really go off this season and have a bounce back from 2024.
Hmm.
And I think especially Chelsea Gray can unlock that for her. And then with
Yeah.
the Sparks, I think Kelsey Plum is going to do the exact same thing for Rikia Jackson and Cam Brink when she comes back, uh, Ray Burrell, and that will be very fun for LA. I don't know if it's going to
Hmm.
be winning basketball in LA. I hope it is, but I think it'll be very fun with Kelsey Plum added to the mix. So I
Yeah.
just want to see how both these teams look, and I don't think either will look bad. I just want to see the result, and that's
Hmm.
all.
I think that one of the things I had this conversation with my friends all the time. We talk basketball literally 24/7 every day. One of the things that kind of stood out to me about Joel Lloyd is when she had her best seasons, it was kind of when Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart were on the team, and she wasn't necessarily the first option. So I feel like now she kind of flows back into a system similar to like what she had in Seattle at the beginning. And she's not technically the first two options anymore, even though the contract is hefty, I might have to say. But it's still Asia Wilson first. I would assume Jackie Williams next. You could even go Chelsea Gray if Jewel wants to continue to play like off the ball. But I think that Vegas is a little bit more dynamic with the four. I do think that Kelsey and Jewel are kind of like the same players, but they have their own like different swag about it. Jewel is a little bit more reserved. She definitely can get her shots up when she needs to, but Kelsey is a little bit more on the attack. She likes to be all over the court. So I'm very interested to see how it pans out for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There is, like I said earlier, like literally just no end to the number of interesting things to keep an eye on for this season because it feels like everyone is pretty decent except for maybe a couple of teams that may or may not be trying to be not good this year. I'm not going to say which team or teams, but I think everyone can kind of infer that. But diving into another fun part of the season, obviously everyone loves to see the end of season awards for players, and we are only on day one. Literally, we have no idea who is going to rise to the top. We might have some really shocking rises from players that we would have never considered for awards. We might see players drop off. No idea. That's what makes these award predictions, these way too early award predictions, so fun because we could kind of just hope for the best and get our predictions out there. And so at the end of the year, we could claim that we knew it all along, or just say that we couldn't have known what we were talking about and cover our tracks, which is what I will plan to do. So
I'm never going to walk it back. I'm just letting y'all know now. Never.
You are much better than me because I will immediately.
I mean, it's like everything to me sometimes is situational, like, hey, this was going on in May. So yeah, this is why I said this. But now we're in August. I have a totally different perspective. And that's okay. Growth. That's what matters.
Things change. We're allowed to change our opinions based on new information.
Agreed.
So that said, we're going to dive into just way too early award predictions from each of us. We'll go through all the major categories, starting with Rookie of the Year. Might be shocking, but I'm going with Paige Bueckers for Rookie of the Year. I have no other reason for it other than she is going to be starting for Dallas. So she's going to get a ton of playing time. And I think that of the rookies that are getting as heavy of minutes as her, she will play the best. And that is just what I think is going to happen. Obviously, you have maybe Sonia Citron, who's going to get a ton of minutes just because of injuries in Washington. Same for Kiki Irifen. Same exact reason. Washington is just dealing with a plethora of injuries. So I think both of them will also get decent amount of playing time. But I think Paige will just end up being at the top. And so, not shocking. What is
not shocking at all?
Not shocking. What is your pick for Rookie of the Year?
I have Paige also. I think it's pretty simple. As long as she's healthy, I mean, it's hers. It's up for the grabs. Kind of like Caitlin's last year, Aaliyah before that. It just kind of keeps going. Dominique Malonga is probably the only person I think that could give her a run for her money. Shout out to Sonia Citron. I definitely think she's gonna get some good burn. Shout out to you for taking your first screen, and it was against BG. You got up, you kept playing the game. Like, that was tough, but I love Sonia, so I think she'll probably come third in voting, but I definitely think it'll go in order 1, 2, 3 at the end.
Totally agree. That is my exact identical 1, 2, 3 prediction as well. Just literally the picks in the draft. So let us move on to Defensive Player of the Year. For me, I'm going with Asia Wilson. I don't see her slowing down in terms of her defense. She is a block machine. I think everyone's scared to take shots on her in the post for that reason. She is just super quick on her feet. And I think that her impact defensively for Vegas is just obvious when she's not on the floor. And you could just see how quickly things start to unravel a bit which is why I was really hoping they would try to go for, like a BG or Bree Jones or someone like that. But I will definitely pick Asia again to win Defensive Player of the Year. Who is your pick?
So I went Gabby Williams on this one. Maybe it's just me. She's a very favorite player of mine. But I think that Gabby being present for a full season is going to be very effective, very productive. People like to give her credit on the offensive end, but I think they forget about her impact on defense. And then we also have on Seattle, NECA, Alicia Clark, Skylar Diggins, Ezzy. That's 4 people right there that are always committed on defense. And then you add Gabby Williams on top of that. I don't really think, you could count against it. But I also, in that same breath, want to acknowledge, I'm not mad if Asia wins Depoy. Asia could win every award if she wants to, even Rookie of the Year. I don't really care. She won it all already. It's already hers. But also, with a team like Seattle who is committed on defense, every one of them might be able to get a nod at Depoy, at least a couple of votes between Gabby, Ezzy, and Alicia Clark. People like to talk about age. I don't talk about age. I talk about what I see with my eyes on the court, and I match the stats with it. And I think Seattle has a really good defensive team this year coming out.
Totally. That, yeah, very valid. And I think that Seattle will end up having probably one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah, I'm going to say top 3 by the end of the season, but top 5 for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We can move to 6th Player of the Year prediction. I think for Winsider's survey, I put Maddie Siegrist as 6th Player of the Year, or I possibly, I think I did. I
can check one moment.
It was either Maddie Siegrist or I put her for Most Improved. And I cannot remember off the top of my head, but she is my pick for one of those awards. But she is definitely set up for a very nice year coming off the bench for, I believe she would be coming off the bench for Paige. And so that should be very interesting. And I think she definitely showed that she was capable of taking a leap last year with Dallas when there were so many injuries and she was asked to play a lot of minutes. I just really enjoy her game. I feel like she's a super solid basketball player. I feel like she just knows what to do at any given moment on the court. And I think that she's going to be really huge for that bench unit. And so I think that's why I put her for 6th Player of the Year.
You did have her for 6th Player of the Year, by the way.
Okay. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's her. So awesome. And that is my pick for 6th Player of the Year. And who is
for
yours?
my pick, I went with Dawana Bonner.
Nice.
She had a conversation with Steph White last year that she would do whatever it took for the team, in order to succeed. I think she carries that mentality this year and comes off the bench as, I'll say they can put her at the 3. But I think she's first person off the bench for sure. They're going to have Natasha Howard and Sophie Cunningham starting alongside Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin, and Kelsey Mitchell. So I think it's only right that DB goes for the 6th Woman of the Year award. I mean, she's already done it before. Why not run it back, especially in Indiana? So I think that's a match made in heaven. She doesn't have to do too much work, but she does just enough for her team.
Totally. Absolutely agreed. Yeah, now that you said that, I'm like, I feel like it is hers to lose. Just I feel like,
listen, if it wasn't DB for me, it would also be Maddie because unfortunately, I do think that she gets booted from the starting lineup, like we kind of talked about previously. But I do think she's also the first person off the bench if she does get booted. So
I agree.
Yeah,
absolutely, totally. Cool. I think that I forgot to write down the Most Improved Player on our
do you
podcast.
Want your answer?
Doc, I think I remember. I think I put Lexi Hall. I'm almost positive I put Lexi Hall. Maybe.
No,
oh
but
it's
okay. That's a good option though. I think the people will like your other pick better.
Who did I pick for?
Camila Cardoso.
Oh, yes. Okay,
that's actually
I remember
nice.
that.
I like that one.
Yeah, so I feel
no
like
shade to Lexi though.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Lexi Hall, I think, is going to have an amazing season again. She finished off last year so strongly, especially with her shooting and her defense. She was looking amazing, especially I think she was inserted into the starting lineup eventually just because of that. But
wasn't she in Unrivaled with Rose BC?
And she was. Yes, she was.
Champion.
So coming off a championship. So she's definitely going to be coming into this season locked in, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
But I went with Camilla because whether people like it or not, I feel like when it comes to players who entered the league with a pretty good amount of expectations placed on them, who then got injured very early
Mm-hmm.
in a season, who come back and perform to those expectations and hit that ceiling that was set for them, they
Mm-hmm.
tend to get a lot of most improved player votes. That's sort of like my logic with picking Camila Cardoso, because I do think that she is going to be very improved. Like I mentioned, I
Mm-hmm.
think that Cordy Vandersloot is going to unlock a lot of her game. I think she will become definitely a double machine for Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and she's going to help them probably lead the league in rebounding. And her defense is also, of course, a big part of her game. So I think that's going to be really exciting to see, especially if she's able to stay healthy. So
Mm-hmm.
for, I guess, similar reasons that people voted for Satu Sabli for most improved player the year she came back from injury, I will lean towards Camila Cardoso, but I would not be shocked if someone like Lexi Hall was able to win that as well. So that is
Yeah.
my logic for that. Yeah.
I definitely agree with all your sentiments. Like, it actually kind of sucked to not see Camilla play in her first year as much because I think that the Sky might have been able to retain some of their players, like maybe even Kennedy Carter. Maybe it wouldn't have panned out the way that it did with Teresa Weatherspoon if Camilla was able to play and they were able to, like, really utilize their system because they also lost Elizabeth Williams too, right? Early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So that automatically takes two people out of your front court. And so, I'm definitely eager to see her come back and, kind of shut people up, make them talk a little bit more, whatever it is.
Yeah. Who's your pick?
Most improved player, right?
Yeah.
Don't shoot me. I I said Kate Martin, and now let me tell you why I said don't shoot me. I don't even know whose spaces I was on like 2 days ago, and they were going in on Kate Martin. And I just felt so bad because
Okay.
it's not like it's Kate's fault that other people got cut from the roster, you know?
Right.
But
Yeah.
like, we also loved her when she was in Vegas. And it wasn't just because like she was in Vegas. Like, her personality fit, when they left her off the bus and she had to like run and everything. They played pranks on each other. Like, she really fit the vibe and the culture of Vegas. But also, she was like a gritty player. She was one of those players that came off the bench and kind of did some of the mucky work that a lot of people don't want to do, or she does it so other people don't have to at the same time. So
Right.
I'm picking Kate for my most improved player because I think she's going to see it in increase in minutes for sure. So that's going to have to cause her to elevate her game regardless whether she wants to or not. Because if you don't, you can quickly find your way out of this league. And if you do, you end up in a position like most improved player. So with the personnel around her, we don't really see the Golden State Valkyries taking too many wins in, but we do see them having like, good spurts, good runs against other teams. Maybe a Sparks, a Connecticut Mystics, whatever. But I think Kate Martin takes that step, not necessarily because she's the face of the franchise and the Golden State Valkyries are like, pushing her, but for the simple fact of we know who she is as a player. We understand that she understands that she's a role player, and she's fine with being that if she needs to. So I think she might be able to take that award from a couple of people.
I agree. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree. It's not her fault. They did all that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
from day one, I feel like her and Tiffany Hayes have been kind of like the faces of Golden State since the expansion draft and since they started to like kind of do all their marketing
Yeah.
and push the team more. Like, those two have been the centerpiece of the team. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can't get mad at them for not, you
Yeah.
know, release. Like,
They
she
weren't
is gonna
protected.
obviously,
Yeah.
yeah,
They weren't
she's
protected in the
obviously,
expansion draft.
Natalie Nakase clearly has big plans for her. So I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I definitely agree with that. She will absolutely take a run at MIP. The fun one, I guess. All of these are fun, but the fun one is definitely predicting MVP of the league. And for me, I have to go for Nafisa Collier, who I think is finally going to win MVP. I think that, last year she had, this is how wild Asia Wilson is this the fact that Nafisa Collier had one of the best regular and post seasons that I think I have ever seen from a player, but Asia Wilson was still somehow better. Especially during the regular season, to the point where she won unanimously, and it was absolutely deserved. I think that Nafisa Collier, though, is coming in with like multiple chips on her shoulder. She, I think, wants to win MVP, but more than that, she wants to win a championship with Minnesota after she feels like they were robbed in the finals, as do many people feel like.
I was just going to say subjective.
Subjectively, a lot of people feel like that is what happened in the finals. The finals happen and they're done and we can move on. But she
As
obviously
she wears her New York hat.
Listen. It has nothing to do with that. No, but I think that she will definitely come in with so much motivation to not only, like I said, do the best that she possibly can for herself to get that recognition, but more than that, I think she just wants to win a championship with this team. Minnesota pretty much ran it back for the most part with the squad that they had last year, and I think that that was super smart because I still think that they had a championship caliber team last year, and they still do this year. So I absolutely think that she could win MVP. And I think, however, it is still Asia Wilson's to lose, as I feel like it will be for the next, hopefully, many, many years. But I do think that Nafisa Collier finally wins it.
Yeah. I'm not going to get into their roster till later. Like, we're going to discuss. But like you said, it's Asia Wilson's to lose. That's my MVP. I think she's going to go for it for a fourth time. Even if Vegas isn't in championship form, Asia Wilson always will be. Her work ethic and what she does in the offseason to stay competitive, to stay in shape, to stay healthy, it really can't be beat. And then when it comes time to actually get on the court, there's nobody really stopping her. So I definitely think it's hers to lose this season. And like you said, for many more, it's probably going to be hers to lose every season at this point. I feel like it could have been like that back in the day for a couple of players, But I do think that Asia is just on a different level. She's definitely in her prime of basketball for sure. So I don't see her slowing down anytime soon.
Absolutely. Totally agreed. And yeah, it's actually wild. I was talking to somebody yesterday for another season preview, and the MVP odds, which is just completely based on people placing bets.
Oh my gosh.
Had them below Caitlin Clark, who's the number one player getting bet on. And I totally think that Caitlin Clark will be in some sort of MVP conversation. I cannot see a world, and that is absolutely no disrespect to Caitlin Clark at all. I just don't see a world where she can beat out Asia Wilson and Nafisa Collier.
Listen, unless Caitlin is averaging like 40 a night, sister, you're not winning MVP this season. And it's no disrespect for whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, I really love Caitlin as a player. I just think that it's a different caliber of basketball right now. Caitlin still has to develop her game, even though she's a phenomenal player. On the defensive end, she still has to get better and stuff like that. You can't always get your pocket picked if you're an MVP, just saying. And so there's some things that, she has to work on to kind of get to that level. Plus 200 for Caitlin Clark is wild. When I saw those odds, I said, the NBA machine is trying to write the WNBA script, and I don't like it. We're not doing this. This is not Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks or whatever everybody keeps going on. This is not that. And don't bring that to the WNBA. Don't bring it over here.
The NBA machine is trying to write a script for the WNBA. That is,
listen, I'm telling
exactly it. Yes, totally agreed. Who do you think is going to win the championship this year?
So I'll never count out Vegas just because any team that has Asia Wilson, I'm always going to put you into contention. I give respect to the New York Liberty with my answer, though. I do think that I still can't talk about Minnesota's roster yet. But New York, I respect you for winning your championship last year. I'm going to respect you again and say, you're in this conversation. But I'm going with Vegas or Seattle. And the reason why I'm saying Seattle is kind of like what I said earlier. This is going to be a defensive heavy team. As long as the synergy and chemistry is working offensively, nobody's really stopping them. And I feel the same way with like Vegas. I think their bench is still questionable, per usual, but that's nothing new since I've been watching the WNBA at this point. I'm just going to trust Becky Hammond and her recipe. We don't have a GM right now. Not even going to get into that, but we did the best we could with what we have. So I do think that I'm going to give them a nod at the championship because you still have Jewel Lloyd, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, and Asia Wilson. Like, that's a Olympic roster right there. So I think that's still hard to beat no matter what team you're going up against. But in a series, I think that those two teams could like really last. Yeah, I see it for them for sure.
Yeah. Seattle definitely scares me. Just if I am the Liberty, I would be scared of Seattle's ability to match up with that roster. So I totally agree. I personally did pick New York, but that is only because I do think they have the ability to go back to back only because of the roster moves that they made this offseason. I do think that for them, contrary to Minnesota, it would have been a little bit of a mistake to just run it back with the same roster because I do think that some holes were exposed a bit by Minnesota's defense, especially their 3-point defense. That ended up being a little bit of a weakness for New York, which I was surprised about because that felt like something that could be a strength, especially for Kayla Thornton and Spinajalini Hamilton, who played injured during the finals.
Yeah.
So I will not blame her for that at all. So being able to get Natasha Cloud and Isabel Harrison off the bench as well, you have Marine Johannes back. They
crazy roster, man.
They put a ton of trust also in their rookies from last year. They kept Marquisha Davis and Jalen Sherrod, which I think is awesome. They have Rebecca Gardner, who looked really good in preseason, like really, really good in preseason for New York. So that'll be really fun to see. And of course, they're starting 5, which is, I think, going to be the near same. So they will have Jonquil Jones, Brianna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, Natasha Cloud, and I assume Leonie Fibich, but I could be wrong. That is going to be a very, very wild roster to see put together. My only question mark with New York, as it was last year, is how good can your defense be? We know you can score. Can you get a stop?
Yeah, I think Natasha Cloud definitely adds that reinforcement in the backcourt that Sabrina Ionescu has needed for a very long time. It sucks with Benaja being out, but it helps that Beck Gardner is back, Marine is back, and Leo can shift over to that 3 so that if you wanted to go with a more bigger lineup, you have Leo, Stewie, John Cole, which we assume is going to be the starting lineup anyway. But then also if Brianna Stewart needs to like rest for a little bit, you still have Kennedy Berg and Isabel Harris who could come in at your 4 position. So I think it works out in their favor. I think you guys really retooled your roster in a really good way. And I can't wait to talk about Minnesota. I'm really itching to get into it. But like overall, like I can see the sentiment for New York running it back. Like I'm not mad at it at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's going to be hard. Running it back is hard for anybody. Vegas did it, and I don't know how, because that is one of the more difficult things to do in professional sports, to go back to back. So yeah, finally we could very briefly touch on just our picks for first team all WNBA. That will be pretty contentious, I think. For me, and I'm going off of what I think I put again on my Winsider survey. I'm pretty sure.
Got it up.
Yeah. Okay. Fact check me on this, but I'm pretty sure I put Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, Caitlin Clark, and Alyssa Thomas.
You went Satu instead of Alyssa.
Oh my God. Well,
but I'm not mad at it. Either pick, I'm not mad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the logic for picking Satu is that if she stays healthy, I could see her having a first team performance this season.
Yeah.
If she's unable to stay healthy, I do think that I would kind of flip to Alyssa Thomas just because she is just so reliable, triple double
Mm-hmm.
machine. Like I said, the engine of any offense that she's in. So I think that she will definitely end up getting a lot of votes for first team. But
Yeah.
I really like the guard you picked for your first
Yeah.
team.
We're
Yeah.
gonna start getting some guards in here, baby. It's not gonna just be a big thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I have Asia. I have Nafisa Collier. I have Caitlin Clark, Satu Sabli, and Skylar Diggins. Um, Three of them are kind of a given with Asia, Caitlin, and Fee. I think we can all agree on those three. Like you said with Satu, if she's healthy, I really think she can have an all WNBA season. Um, she has the length, the size, the versatility to really like get any type of matchup or shot that she wants. It really does just come down to health though. But I think she did pretty good this offseason. She was in Unrivaled. They didn't win and they didn't go too far. But, you know, she still got some burn. She played with different people and she was able to kind of be, I don't want to say lured to the Mercury, but she kind of was, even though they traded
Yeah.
Natasha Cloud anyway. But that was wild.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if she's healthy, I can see her being all WNBA. And then Skylar, this goes back again. Skylar's just different. She's a dog. I'm always going to give her that nod as being somebody as a guard who can raise the bar for everybody else. So I think she breaks that all W first team this year. Yeah, I definitely see it.
I love it. I see the vision with Skylar
Mm-hmm.
Diggins. I feel like she is gonna have a really good year, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
especially with the defense being the priority, I feel like for Seattle is gonna really help her shine a lot more too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I do think that, and it sucks that they weren't able to figure out, but Jewel and Skylar being where they are right now is probably the best thing for everybody. In terms of fit and just like next chapter, I really think that, you know, Jewel wanted to be on a team like Vegas, the current Vegas team. And I think that Skylar wanted to be on a team like the current Seattle team where, you know, everybody's kind of on the same page and they're tethered. That chemistry is just going to come naturally for them. So I do think in those respective environments, they're going to be the best selves. And I like that.
totally. Absolutely. I think we could actually probably jump to before we talk about the games that we're excited to see today and just this
Mm-hmm.
weekend. I think since you're dying to talk about Minnesota and their roster, we could talk about some of the finalized rosters that really jumped out
Yeah.
to us. And what are your thoughts on Minnesota?
So, okay, because at first I thought it was genius. I'm not going to say that it's still not, but walk with me. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think that Minnesota not changing too much of their roster was going to pay off very big for them this season. But I think that with players not reporting on time, Cheryl Reeve saying that the people in training camp looked out of place, out of touch, I think she may have felt like she made a mistake in not
Mm,
trying to attract more people there during the off season. Um, I just I still consider them number two, so I'm going to give them that grace. But I do think that they should have made a little bit more moves, enhanced their bench a little bit more. Sorry, and I really feel like they would have been still one of the top teams to compete. Right now, I do see Minnesota as probably like a fifth place team instead of a second place team, considering how their roster is going to ebb and flow right now. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, Minnesota. I'm sorry. I like you all. Courtney Williams, you're my favorite player on that team. But ultimately, I do think they should have did more in the offseason.
valid. All valid points. Especially when you see Seattle, who I feel like we've been giving a lot of love to. Like, I can absolutely see Seattle making that push to, I guess, replace Minnesota in the standings or I guess in the power rankings.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up being the two seed just because they have that experience. They changed up a few things with their roster. They drafted
Yeah.
well. Obviously, getting Dominique Malonga is going to help them tremendously. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, totally agree. I think for me, some of the rosters that stuck out to me. Seattle. for all the reasons that we've been explaining. I think that they both ends of the floor are going to be really tough to beat. The Indiana Fever, who I feel like we also gave a lot of love to in the last episode that happened a while ago, because they
Mm-hmm.
just kind of had the best offseason, I think, of any team in the league.
Yes. They
They did
made the perfect moves.
literally everything hit the right notes. So that was fantastic to see. And they're definitely one of my favorite rosters. Atlanta, I do love that they got BG Ibri Jones. So they end up on my list of favorite rosters just because I feel like they also quietly had a pretty solid offseason. And I'm excited to see how Alicia Gray's performance in Unrivaled translates to the
Mm-hmm.
regular season because she was killing it on the Lunar Owls. Same with Ryan Howard. She was great with Vinyl. I feel like she will
Mm-hmm.
carry that over as well. So I'm excited to see that roster take shape. And I did have Minnesota for the reason that I had mentioned, which is that I felt like it was a
Mm-hmm.
good move for them to like keep consistency going and keep that
Yeah.
chemistry going. But like you made the great point of it seems like maybe Cheryl Reeve especially might be seeing that there might have been more moves to be made, especially when you look at the changes like Seattle and Indiana went through and got better
Mm-hmm.
for. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think Minnesota is like the revelation of that is going to be more long term than it is immediate. Like they're still going to be able to compete and keep up. But when we
Mhm.
get to post All Star and nearing the playoffs, how is everything going to shake out? And is your bench strong enough to, last through the postseason? Not mad at the Atlanta Dream pick. They're not high on my list personally. But that's not to say because I don't like the players. The combination of them is just a little wonky for me. So I think I have to see it unfold a little bit more. We only really saw like one game in the preseason, I think,
Yeah.
maybe two.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just want to watch them a little bit more. But you
Yeah.
said my teams as well. Happy to see Seattle for all the reasons we've already mentioned. And then Indiana, they have a great mix of youth and veterans. They have a bunch of electric players that like to get up and pace the floors too, especially in transition. So I think they're gonna be like a really fun, fast-paced team, especially under Steph White. Like, I think they're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
be great. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm curious to know if there are any cuts that really surprised you this offseason. I feel like that ended up being a pretty big
Mm.
talking point. I feel like it gets bigger
Yeah.
every season, especially as the WNBA becomes more broadcasted, especially to like social media, where people
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately do get attached to some of the players that are drafted or signed to training camp deals for these teams. And then
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, just because of how small rosters have to be in the W,
Mm-hmm.
cuts that no one likes to see happen. So, were there any cuts that really jumped out to you as surprising?
Yeah, there were really three. Diamond DeShields was one. She just got cut yesterday, Thursday. And she posted a really sad story about it on her Instagram as well, about how she drove all of her belongings from Atlanta to Connecticut. And that's a really long drive. That's
Yeah.
like from one end of the country to the next. So I really feel for her. And I don't really know if it was concerning her health or other things. She did have an unprotected contract, but I think it was worth like 115 million, I think. I mean, not million. Oh, Lord, I wish. 115,000. I
You're
think it
like,
was
oh,
worth
okay, well,
115,000. And it
yeah,
sucks because, usually when you get a contract like that, you think that you're staying on the team, even if it is unprotected. A contract worth that amount, it kind of signals that the franchise wanted you. So just to see her kind of cut, that kind of, saddened me. Madison Scott being cut from the Wings, she was drafted. I really thought that Madison was going to make the team. Her energy, her positivity, her willingness to learn, and even her size and her height, I really thought that she would provide great post depth. But I don't know, maybe the Wings saw something different. It's not really up for me to choose, but I do think she will end up on a roster in the WNBA if
Yeah. I had the exact same list, except for one, but I had Diamond to Shields because that does suck. I feel like she had such a great year with Chicago last year. I did see a tweet, I believe, from Richard Cohen that's mentioned something about her getting a payout of somewhere around $20,000 for insurance because she had a knee injury, I guess, throughout preseason and through training camp.
Oh.
And so I think the post also mentioned that she should be cleared for basketball activity in 3 weeks or somewhere in that range. So maybe a
Mm-hmm.
team is able to pick her up if they do have an opening. I think that would be a smart move by literally any team to
Mm-hmm.
add her to their roster just because she is such a great player. And that is very sad. And that is a deep drive. And that's just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
Um, Letitia Amir, that one, I think, brought out a lot of the conspiracy theorists about Golden State and their roster construction, just because it kind of
Yeah.
is antithetical to what head coach Natalie Nakase said she wanted from a starting roster and from a finalized
Mm-hmm.
roster, which is a team that competes and are dogs and just, are going to play hard every night. I think she had that in Amir and now she is not on the team. So that is very confusing. And same for her, where I hope that somebody is able to pick her up because
Mm-hmm.
those two have no business not being on a roster.
I know, right?
Um, the third cut probably isn't surprising for a lot of people, but I think just disappointing to me was Haley Jones getting cut by Atlanta.
Mm,
I just felt like
yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a way to say this, but I feel like she had lasted so long with them that I felt like the team saw something in her and saw that she would take, these incremental leaps each season, which I think we
Mm-hmm.
did see when she would get minutes throughout her time with the team. And now, obviously, new regime, new head coach, and unfortunately, she finds herself off the roster. I don't know if it's just she didn't really fit the new system where it's like the emphasis on 3-point shooting, and maybe because
Yeah.
she is more of like a driver and more of someone who's going to look for her points in the paint and in the mid range, that didn't fit. But that is
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate to see. So she was a casualty of that, need to get down to 12 roster spots. So that was a little bit
Yeah.
sad. But yeah,
I
that is my
agree.
list.
Because I also think Haley was closing on a home in Atlanta.
Oh,
I hope I'm not misspeaking, but I did see a post about that, and it's like that sucks. So I do hope she finds success, or that Atlanta could possibly use her at some point during the season. Hoping for no injuries for the team. But however Atlanta or somebody else can use her, I would love for somebody to pick up Haley Jones. And I really
absolutely.
hope it wasn't over the threes, because then that will make my philosophy about this positionless basketball and all of these 3-pointers in the game like even more valid. Like, you don't want
Yeah.
to, you're cutting me because I can't consistently shoot a 3 ball. Like, that's more than half of basketball players across the world, quite
Yeah.
literally.
Absolutely. And like I said, like I feel like she was taking leaps in her play. Like I feel like she became a really good role player for Atlanta in her few
Mm-hmm.
years there. And yeah, like you said, I don't wish for injuries, but I do hope that she is able to make her way back onto a
Mm-hmm.
roster soon. Same with Diamond and same with Letitia.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into brief thoughts on the WNBA and their GM survey results, which were very messy for
Dun
no
dun
reason,
dun.
what are some games today and just this weekend that you're excited to watch?
Yeah, I think we agree on a couple of them. Sky Fever, of course, we love the
Yeah.
spicy. And I'm not talking about Sophie. I'm talking about Angel
Mm-mm.
versus Caitlin.
Yep. Definitely not
Angel
her.
versus Caitlin. That's probably going to be a matchup for the rest of the time that they're in the W. So if that's what it takes, go ahead and bring it. Of course, Aces Liberty. We get to see how, wow, both teams are actually new. Very big changes. No more Courtney
Hmm.
Vandersloot. No more Kelsey Plum. A lot of changes for both the Aces and the Liberty. So I'm excited to see that one. And then Storm Mercury. Uh, Mercury still trying to understand how they look on paper. They still kind of look how they did last year, just a few more different, personnel that are a little bit better. But overall, I think seeing just how they look individually and just seeing my Storm do what they do. I just love all the players. Like it's so hard to hate a team like that.
It's
So yeah,
valid.
those three matchups. I'm really looking forward to seeing those this weekend.
Totally. Like you said, we have two already in common. So yeah, Sky Fever. I feel like that matchup's always going to be good, just because there is a little bit of like underlying, just on the court rivalry between Angel Reese and
Yes,
Caitlin Clark,
absolutely, just on the court.
which I love. I love basketball rivalries. That again, it is just on the court, which I think is a very good, healthy reminder for people. And after Sky Fever, I have Aces Liberty. Liberty that's their ring day, since it's happening at like 1 in the afternoon Eastern time. So that'll be their ring ceremony. They'll be raising the banner for the championship and then playing the Aces. So that game should have a little bit of extra oomph to it, because obviously the Aces are trying to get back on top. The Liberty are trying to stay there, and both great teams. So it should be a really good environment. And my third matchup that I'm going to be keeping an eye on is Dallas Wings versus Minnesota Lynx. Dallas, obviously, debut of Paige Beckers in the regular season for her rookie year. And then Minnesota, seeing how they look on their return. I think I did already see that Kayla McBride is going to be out for that game, as well as, I believe, Alana Smith. So they're missing some pretty key pieces to their offense. But other than that, they have Nafisa Collier, they have Courtney Williams, so they shouldn't be too pressed to find points, but it's very curious to see how they match up with Dallas, who seems to be pretty healthy. So those are my three. Yeah.
Okay. I like the Wings mini point out. I guess I didn't consider it because, experience Paige and a bunch of, respectfully, like younger people, rookies versus somebody who just went to the finals last year. It's like, I don't want to see them get dog walked in their first game, like they should have eased them into something like maybe the Mystics or
I don't know why the W it keeps doing that, because I feel like last year Indiana had like a ridiculous slate to start the season, and I was like, they don't want to see Caitlin Clark
they don't want to
get
see her
acclimated easily. Like, they want her to struggle to get even better, which it did happen. So that's nice. But I remember
totally
being at the Liberty game where they just completely dismantled Indiana. And I was like, yep, this is great. But I mean, she's gonna learn from this experience, and she did. So she got way better after that.
Yeah.
So the final topic is going to be this very interesting WNBA GM survey that just had results posted yesterday. And there were some interesting results.
I don't know who these GMs are, and I'm glad they remained anonymous because, listen.
I'll just run through a couple of the stats that the WNBA's official Twitter shared.
Yeah,
so they have Nafisa Collier. Ones. They did. They were very strategic in which ones they shared. So Nafisa Collier, according to this GM survey, she's most likely to win MVP in 2025. Also considered the best defensive player, most versatile player, and the best forward in the WNBA. And then the next slide is all about the Indiana Fever. It says they made the best overall moves this offseason, which I would agree with. Will be most improved. I don't agree with that. I think Seattle will be most improved.
Okay.
I think they also got listed as most fun to watch. I could see that. And most promising young core. I could also agree with that.
Yeah.
Which team will win the 2025 WNBA Finals? 60% of GMs voted for the Minnesota Lynx, so a pretty decent majority.
I'm not walking back what I said about Minnesota. I'm telling y'all, watch by August 2025. I'm telling y'all, watch.
We're going to return to this moment in the episode, clip it, and this will be this will either be featured in the Minnesota Lynx' like championship video at the end of
Oh
the
my
year,
gosh. I hope not.
or or not. But 60% of GMs feel like they will win the championship. The Liberty are at 20%. The Fever at 10, tied with the Aces at 10%, which is again interesting.
Disrespectful.
It is a little bit very disrespectful to the Aces. Rookie of the year, according to GMs, obviously, Paige Becker's got 73% of the vote. Dominique Malonga got 18. Sonia Citron got 9.
Yep.
Yeah, just going through this thread.
I will say about the rookie of the year. The fact that they said Paige would win it at 73%, but then the rookie who will be the best in 5 years is Dominique Malonga, said by 60% of the votes. And it's like, do you not think she's good enough now? And I'm not saying that they had to pick Malonga over Paige, but 73% to 18% is like a stark difference from somebody that you think is going to be better than her in 5 years. Just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Scrolling through the rest of these results, like most of it feels like completely reasonable. Some things that caught my eye that kind of made no sense to me were if you were to start a franchise today, could sign any player in the W, who would it be? 50% said Caitlin Clark and 33% said Asia Wilson. But then the following question
I
is
wish
which
y'all could see
player
my face right now.
it's no, and that's how I felt reading this. And the second question is which player forces opposing coaches to make the most adjustments? 33% voted Asia Wilson. So, and Caitlin Clark got 25% after that.
They're
I just
trying to
don't
push this
know.
MVP season. They're trying to push this MVP
Yeah,
season a
it's
little too
very
hard for me.
interesting. It is happening. It's already starting. And again, I think she'll be in the conversation, but I don't see how she can compete with Asia Wilson's like impact, her numbers. If we're just looking at it from like a box score watching standpoint, it's really, really difficult to envision a future where this is actually a likelihood.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, everything else kind of makes sense to me. Like Asia Wilson and the Facey Collier are tied for best forward. That makes total sense. They said Asia Wilson is also the best center in the WNBA. Caitlin Clark and Chelsea Gray are tied for who's the best point guard in the WNBA.
Wild.
That one is a bit wild because I feel like Chelsea Gray's turnovers are significantly lower than Caitlin Clark's, but it's okay.
Also, somebody has 2 back-to-back rings and then one with the Sparks as well. And they're on the same level as Caitlin Clark as a passer. Hey.
Yeah.
Whatever the GM said, they get paid the big bucks.
This is true. This is something that I think everyone should take a look at because it's always fun to look back on these at the end of the season as well and after the finals are over, just to see how GMs really gauged the league as a whole. See what they were right about. I feel like most of the time, no disrespect, very respectfully to GMs who, like you said, get paid the big bucks. I feel like most of the time I look back and it didn't make any sense what they predicted or said. And it's usually the complete opposite of what happens. So take it with a grain of salt. But still very fun to see how the league is being perceived, especially by executives ahead of the trade deadline and also ahead of the new CBA.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see these results every year because it kind of makes sense about some of the moves that happen when it comes to roster cuts. And you're like, well, why did this player get cut? And then you go and read something like this. You're like, okay. It tracks for the most part. But ultimately, thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I know we're going away for a little while, but we're back consistently, of course, with the season tipping off today. So make sure you are following Winsider on all platforms: Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, where you get all of your content and information from the W. We are present.
Absolutely. This was awesome. And looking forward to talking about the first week of games in the 2025 season instead of just talking about what we expect to happen. It's going to actually happen.
We get to see some action now.
Absolutely. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And like Jasmine said, don't forget to like and subscribe and share, comment, and shoot us questions, comments, concerns. Maybe not concerns, because that would suck.
Yeah,
but...
you can take that up with Winsider HR. Don't know who that is, but you could contact them.
But all right, we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.